G'day watchers, welcome back to the channel. In today's video I want to do a pretty massive comparison. Now I haven't taken on 5 watches for quite some time now, as you guys may know, but I thought it's worth doing this now because a couple of these pieces have become more recently available, and I think it's an opportune time to make a comparison of these Rolex Submariner Homage watches, 5 of them, 5 different levels or 5 different tiers, from very cheap to reasonably expensive, approaching kind of entry to mid-tier Swiss-made type of prices. So thank you to Jody from Just One More Watch for making this Tevise diver, or actually it's more a men's mechanical watch, available. So that's become available most recently. And then again, thank you to local friend and supporter Graham for making this Steinhart OVM available, a watch which I featured in quite a few videos and which I guess stands up to great comparisons. It's just a good touch piece to use. All the other watches you've seen me review, and they do belong in my collection otherwise. So guys, these are clearly Rolex Submariner homages, right? There's no question about it. I guess on the left here we have more 116610 style, or I guess 16610, the 5-digit previous model type of homages. Different sizes, of course, particularly the Tevise was a bit larger. And then on the right we have more, I guess, slightly different designs here, particularly as you look at the hands of these 2 pieces. It's not the typical Mercedes hands. And then the Steinhart particularly is an homage of a vintage sub. Okay, so they're not completely the same homages, but they are all Rolex sub homages. They are all made of 316L steel. Okay, so none of these differ as far as I know. They all have unidirectional rotating bezels of various qualities, and they all have oyster style bracelets. Already you can see it right there. They all have that oyster bracelet with various degrees of screw-in case backs and what have you. So let's get into it and start. On the very left we have the Tevise men's mechanical model T108A. This one retails for about the $22 mark, and I'll put that right on the left, and then we go up in price. Next up we have the Invicta Pro Diver, in this case represented by my 8026 model. I guess I would have loved to be able to feature an OB model with a coinage bezel, but this is what I have available, my Invicta Pro Diver. Next up, Phoibos Great White. Now this is a watch that I've really liked. It's in regular rotation through my, I guess, my daily wears. This is the Phoibos Great White PY007C, a watch that has become available in the last I guess a few months now, but something that I've really enjoyed. Next up, Steinhart Ocean Vintage Military, again, kindly provided by friend Graham. Something that I reviewed quite a while back, but it's really a very popular piece, well respected as well. Arguably, of all these companies, Steinhart is the most respected company. None of these companies, of course, are without controversy, but this one probably has the most respectable following, I would say. And then on the very right, the most expensive piece ostensibly is the Ginault Ocean Rover Date, right? This one is the 181270 GSLN Gold Sand with black bezel rotation there and a black aluminium insert. Okay, so that's the 5 watches. Let's start on the very left with the Tevise. Okay, so T108A. The typical price that this is going for, as I've seen, is about 22 USD. On sale, it's even below 20 USD. So it's fantastic in terms of the price. It's almost unbelievable. Chinese made, of course, right? There's no pretense about this being Chinese made. The case diameter is 42 millimeters and the thickness is 14 millimeters. Relatively light at 135 grams, suggesting perhaps the steel is not quite the most solid. Perhaps the bracelet, they've cheated You know, it is steel, but you know, somehow they've achieved a relatively lightweight. Now, importantly, this isn't really a water resistant watch, right? This is a 30-meter rated water resistance. So really it hasn't been designed for proper resistance. You know, look at the case back there, right? I don't know how that actually fits, but it may just be a push on. Certainly the crown, right, is no screw-in crown. That's just rotates on the base position there. Now, the movement, the sources don't directly state it, but as far as I have gathered and studying the movement itself, you know, taking a look through the display case back there, as you can see, right, I think this is a Tongji movement, right, a Chinese standard unified movement, which means it is going to be a 21,600 beat per hour movement with minimum 40-hour power reserve, and they are supposed to have at least 17 joules. They may have more in a higher grade movement, but I think at $20 it's probably just the baseline. The loom is a very standard loom. It's not fantastic at all, fairly average, in fact probably comparable to Invicta, which is you know, what I've usually called worst in class. It's going to be mineral glass with that cyclops state there, right? You're not going to be getting anything more than that. The bezel is a metal insert, right? Probably aluminium. You know, just a point of note, to get that type of metal look, it's going to be aluminium or some metal. You can't really achieve that as far as I know with ceramic. Ceramic is either going to be white or a kind of more grayed out look in all the ones that I've seen in my possession. The bracelet ends are hollow in this case, right? You're not getting solid end links for the bracelets, and the link fastener, of course, is going to be pins, right? You're not getting screws here with a press metal clasp, which, you know, it's you know, there's a weakness there. I think on the wrist is okay, but you know, I'll just put it together, and again, you just pull it apart because it's not machined to very high tolerances, of course. No dive suit extension, and you know, dial wise, you can see there's a little bit of a sunburst there, so that's a nice little addition. But you know, the bezel is poor, right? Look at that. There's lots of play on the bezel, and right, it's also a 60-click bezel. Of course, this isn't really a dive watch, so maybe that's just, you know, for show, for homage, for I guess surface timing, if you're gonna, you know, do some cooking or whatever else you might use a timing bezel for. Right, so that's the Tevise here. Really the bottom of the bunch, probably the cheapest sub homage you can get. You know, you know, I guess if you can find cheaper, it won't be much cheaper. $20. What do you expect? That's what you're getting. Okay, the starting point here for the comparison. Right, next up, Invicta. I have done a lot of Invictas. If you follow the channel, you are no stranger to the Invicta Pro Diver. This MSRP is $315, but of course you're not going to ever pay that for an Invicta Pro Diver. This is $85 or cheaper on Amazon. Japanese movement, right? If you can see at the bottom there, I'm not sure if it's clear, it's Japanese movement. Ostensibly, of course, it's going to be cased up in China. Right? I don't expect anything else at this price point. 40mm on the case, 13mm stick. Invicta emblazoned on the side there, which has given the company no short amount of stick. You know, personally, I also prefer if they probably didn't punch their logo on the side there, as if you want to show that off. Right, water resistant. Okay, so they've called this a Pro Diver. Probably professionals won't use this, but it does have a 200-meter water rating. It does have a display case back with screw-in on the fastening there, as well as a screw-in crown to give you that water rating, which, you know, I think it does work. Definitely for all of the purposes I put it through, it does have that rating, that reassurance to me. The movement is a Seiko NH35A, right? Very, very common, nothing very special. They've kind of done their own printing on the rotor there, but otherwise it's the standard 21,600 beats per hour, 41-hour power reserve with 24 joules. You know, you would have known this movement if you follow watches. The loom is poor, and I've always complained about Invicta's loom. It's tritnite. I always kind of say you might as well call it, you know, rubbish or trash or something, you know, Tritnite, so what? It's poor lume, mineral glass. The bezel is a aluminium insert. In this case, it's not quite the Rolex sub type of printing. This is more towards an Omega Seamaster, and you will notice as well scalloped edge bezel again towards more an Omega Seamaster type of style. But you can get this in the original coin edge bezel if you so choose in that version. The end links on the bracelet are hollow, and the bracelet adjustment is pin, and the bracelet clasp is no more than just simple basic pressed metal with no dive suit extension. Things to note about this, well, it's got a kind of a gloss dial, right, and it's got that scallop bezel. There's a little bit of different features of this particular model, but you know this watch, right? If you follow Invicta or you follow dive watches, you will have come across the Pro Diver. Right, so next up, the Phoibos Great White. Now, to start with, you know, $20 to $80, about 4 times in price. We're going up about 3.5 times in price now to the Phoibos Great White, which has a listed MSRP of $399, but realistically on sale it's almost always available for the $279 US mark, and even further on sale sometimes around the $225 mark. You know, people have had reports of getting it on that sale price. The movement is Japanese. It doesn't quite say that on the dial, and good on them for not cluttering the dial here, but it is a Japanese movement, cased up, you know, perhaps in Malaysia or China. I'm not really sure. At least the movement, I think, could possibly be made outside of Japan. Casing up, I think, you know, I probably take that last comment back. This is almost certainly cased up in China again. But you know, you're getting a pretty nicely edged, solid, you know, pretty solid looking case back there that screws in with a screw-in crown, and this one, you're increasing the panache of the watch, right? It goes up to 300 meters in terms of the water resistance. It has a better movement compared to the Seiko NH35A. I think there's no controversy in that. It's the Miyota 9015 28800 beat per hour movement, right? More the common Swiss beats per hour. 42-hour reserve with 24 jewels. The lume is very fair on this one. It is C1 Superluminova, not the best, but it performs very fair for me. You know, no complaints about that. They've stepped it up to sapphire crystal, in this case also with that Cyclops state, and they've also gone and put a ceramic bezel insert. So you can see here, it doesn't have the metal finish. It has a white finish for that ceramic look. I guess, you know, you do have to print white to get high visibility, high contrast on ceramic. Otherwise, it's going to be somewhat grayed out. The bracelet end links on this are solid, right? The push pins still exist on the link fastening, right? You don't have screws yet, but you do have solid end links on the bracelet. And you again still have a pressed metal finish on the clasp, but the middle links are a little bit more solid, right? They've got some thickness, and then they've also included a pressed metal release there. Okay, so a step up here in terms of overall finishing quality. There's no doubt about it. Phoibos have chosen to implement a flat black on the dial there. There's no gloss on that. It's relatively flat. So you know that's what you're getting for this particular watch, that particular idiosyncrasy anyway. Okay, so that's the Phoibos. Let's move on to the Steinhart. Again, quite possibly the strongest name in terms of company here, right? The most respected company, I think, without a doubt, is this one. So this is the Ocean Vintage Military. The SKU is 1030339 if you're interested in this particular version. This isn't the first Ocean Vintage Military. The first one that came out had a darker dial. It didn't have the Ocean 1, I believe, under the Steinhart. So it was a more pure version. In fact, the first one also did a fake rating of the water resistance. They put 200 there to homage the original Rolex Sub Vintage. whereas this watch truly is rated at 300 meters. Right, what's this available for? Around 450 USD is the selling price. Steinhart don't market through grey retail, or they try not to, so you have to buy it directly from their authorized dealers or themselves. 450 USD is the going rate. In this case, you're stepping up to Swiss made, so you can see at the bottom there, they qualify for the Swiss made descriptor, so meaning at least 60% of the cost. I believe that's a cutoff. 60% of the total cost of manufacturing the watch has to be originated in Switzerland itself. The case in this is 42 millimeters across, 13 millimeter on the thickness there. A lot more substantial than the earlier watches, right? Invicta and Tevise were around the 135, 140 mark. This one steps up to the 175 grams on the wrist. Definitely feel that difference. The movement is the very well respected ETA 2824-2. Of course, it's the Swiss 28,800 beats per hour, 40-hour reserve, and slightly more dual count at 25. The lume in this case is a very pleasing old radium luminova is what they've gone with. And I think that at least equates C1 on the Phoibos, if not slightly better perhaps. It depends on how much they've chosen to put on there. Sapphire, of course, at Steinhart price points. And in this case, it is a very pleasingly domed sapphire. And you can see it's giving that distortion effect there, which is, something that, I really enjoy with the particularly domed pieces that you might not get if it was a flat piece. Like this bezel insert, you can see there's a vintage look there, right? It doesn't have the minute markings just on the first 15 or 20 minutes. It goes all the way around, similar to the vintage Rolex Sub. It is an aluminium insert, and I think that is a nod to the past. Steinhart, you can very easily get watches with a ceramic insert for around the same price point. So it is, I think, not a cost cutting. It's more a choice to homage the past. Because you can easily get ceramic watches from the Steinhart range, right? So I think that's my opinion of it. So rather than a step down, that's just a conscious choice to go for aluminium. The bracelet end links are of course going to be solid. All right, let's just show it to you. Okay, and then Steinhart, very pleasingly, they do go for screw adjustment for the links. Okay, so you're going up to screw now. Semi-solid links, but again, that's also a pressed metal finish on the clasp there. And I think infamously Steinhart on their watches, probably the clasp is the single biggest weak factor that they have, right? It's almost as if they ran out of budget, and at the end they had to put in pressed metal. Right, so again, what are the notable things at this $450 price point, right? Roughly double the Phoibos. You're getting Swiss made. You're getting a vintage homage that is very well executed. You're getting a different type of lume. Certainly it's super luminova, but slightly different style. In this case, they've chosen not to implement a date, right? That's again an homage thing. You can easily get date display watches from Steinhart, right? So that's the OVM, the Steinhart OVM. And then lastly, stepping up to Ginault. So Ocean Rover, in this case, the date version. 181270 GSLN is the model number for this particular watch. The retail price is $13.99 USD, but I believe you can still quite easily get a coupon code for a discount, and realistically it's around 840 USD that you're going to pay for. If not, you might be paying full price. I'm not sure if anybody has gone out and paid full price for this, but you're looking at least twice the price of the OVM, the Steinhart. Right, what are you getting? Well, they say it's US predominant, right? So it's not fully made in the USA, but assembled in the USA is what the writing at the bottom of the dial says. It's not 100% manufactured, right? That's what you need to do if you want to say made in USA, but the company ostensibly says this is majority USA. Now, that's controversial. Some people have disputed that. I've got no shortage of comments on the videos I've done on this, so I'm not gonna go into that in too much detail. What I'm going to report is just what I've been told directly from the mouth of the company and what they say on their website. 40mm, right, vintage size, right, classic sub size. It is 14mm on the thickness, and it does go for the 300-meter water rating, right? You can see that on the dial there, which I guess a lot of it apes the Submariner, which is Homage's, right? 4 lines of text, you know, that's another thing as well. What movement is it? Well, it's an ETA 2824-2 clone. They've come out and said it is a clone. It's not made by ETA, but the specs are the same. 28,800 beats per hour, 40-hour power reserve, and 25 joules. The loom is something, you know, what they say is something special, and who knows what it really is, but they call it the Ginault Gold Sand. How well does it perform? Well, it performs at least as well as C1 Superluminova, slightly worse than C3 on my Oris Aquastate. Check out the loom video comparison, which I did a while back, if you're interested in the details on that. The Sapphire, again, is domed, but in this case, you know, I think perhaps slightly more distortion than the OVM. You know, that's just my particular experience. No date window or no date magnifier, which I think I like. I've never been a big fan of the Cyclops dates, so there's a date window there at 3 o'clock, but they've chosen not to implement a magnifier. No complaints from me that they've missed that out. The bezel, okay, again, they've gone for aluminium. I think that is also an Homage consideration, because this Homage's a 5-digit sub, you know, 16610 rather than the 116610 modern sub. That's what they've said, and in homaging that, I think they've gone for aluminium rather than cost cutting. That's what I think anyway, or what I feel that they've gone and done. The bracelet endings at this price point, of course, they have to provide solid, otherwise people will be all over them. The adjustment is pleasingly also screw, just like Steinhart, right? Hopefully you can see there's a screw link adjustment, just like Steinhart. And then the last thing is that this class is definitely a step better than any other sub Homage I've seen. It is a glide lock style Rolex release, right? The oyster type of pattern that Rolex currently does with glide lock adjustment, and that's really very, very pleasing that they've gone to that level of class, and it's really a step above the rest here, right? So this is possibly the best sub Homage out there. It's definitely the best I have ever had on hand. You know, you're getting ostensibly what is mostly assembled in the US, right? Debate that if you will, but that's what they've said. It's a black enamel style dial, so again something that's a bit different to the rest here, and you know, again, you're getting the best bracelet, the best class out of this lot here. So guys, you know, that's gone on for quite long now. That's the comparison and the description of what you're getting across these price points. 5 tiers of Rolex Submariner Homages. Let me know what you think, what experiences you have with particular models. I'm very interested to hear that. Guys, if you're enjoying my videos, do consider subscribing. New content weekly, always aiming to be objective and unbiased about all things horology. Thank you for persisting with me this far if you have, and as always, I will see you guys next time.